Alright everyone, another episode of I Fucking Told You So, and it's like, they wait until the middle of a YouTube purge that's prefaced partially on Vox going crazy, and Slate now has published an article talking about how they should bring back the golden era. This is according to Slate's news. And keep in mind, Slate is run by a bunch of supposedly like hippie-trippy granola liberals, so it's very funny that they would say this, bring back the golden age of broadcast regulations. The idea that Slate has, and this is not coincidentally, it would be really great for Slate as far as destroying most of their independent online competitors. The idea is to apply the kind of regulations we have on other communication systems to the internet, not render it a utility like we would have like the phone companies or something. Phone company can't stop you from using the phone because you have wrong-think political views. No, instead they want broadcast regulations. The idea is that the YouTube and Facebook especially like TV or something. Now, of course, this is a bunch of BS. Because what Slate deftly avoids mentioning is twofold. Number one, Slate would be a big winner if that were to happen. People like me wouldn't be using YouTube, certainly, so YouTube would become just an on-demand service. The thing is that it would take another generation for people to phase out of that and slowly migrate to better platforms where actual independent commentary is still being made, like BitChute, which doesn't even fall directly under U.S. law, which it's hilarious to think that people within the United States, like Gab and so forth, would have to choose registrars and hosting sites and shit in other countries in order to be able to platform people and have free speech. It's dystopian to the maximum possible degree that would happen. So first, it would benefit Slate, like it would benefit the other legacy media sites, because of course they tone down their content. They dumb things down. They want dumb people. They want sheep to absorb their boring content. They can't compete with someone who can say shit. They can't compete with somebody who can tell it how it is and tell people, yeah, by the way, there's screwed up things going on in the world. Sometimes it's not as cut and dry as it's Orange Man bad or Democrats' fault or something very simplistic and third grade of that nature. That's number one. Number two, they deftly avoid mentioning that this has nothing to do with like, if you had broadcast regulations a la TV or radio or terrestrial radio or something on the internet or on specifically publishing sites or platforms that do video and social media and stuff. They definitely avoid mentioning that it would involve profanity, would certainly run afoul of it. Because what would happen is moralists would get a hold of that legislative capability, they would get a hold of that bureaucracy, and eventually you'd no longer be able to criticize religion, you'd no longer be able to swear, you wouldn't be able to play certain music after a tragedy or something. There's a precedent for this, it's called fucking radio. It's why satellite radio exists. There's a precedent for it. It's called cable. That's why cable is dying. People use on-demand for the vapid swill, the Hollywood shit, and then they use YouTube or something like that for everything else. There's a fucking reason that the internet became so popular. It's because people wanted to get away from that sort of boring bullshit. The other thing that Slate fails to mention is, of course, that this is a manufactured problem. The idea of extremism on the internet, cyberbullying, all of these bugaboo phantoms, these shadows that people keep chasing, they're barely real. The number of actual extremist incidents linked provably to any sort of extremism on the internet is very, very small. More often, I think you don't hear about all the cases where someone decides not to harm themselves because they got talked down from the ledge because they had a friend online. You don't hear about how people like myself, we get contacted by people on a regular basis asking for help, saying, well, I got problems in my life, can I talk to you and stuff? And maybe it helps them in some measurable way. Slate's not going to do that for you. Slate's too busy telling you the next war is a good idea. This policy is good, something that's going to help the billionaires or something. That's what Slate wants to do, bunch of fucking sellouts. And then they get angry like the dude from Vox there. Oh my god, Crowder, he bullied me. Oh my god, YouTube needs to do more about it. Well, you're constantly defaming people over there at Vox and Slate and BuzzFeed and places like that. And I've been defamed by BuzzFeed. Far right now. Oh, yes, I'm exactly alt-right adjacent according to the Data Society report because I like debating people. Yes, that's intellectually honest, dude. Now, I'll tell you what will happen if you apply terrestrial radio-style prohibitions on users on YouTube and Facebook and places like that. The legacy media will guffaw for a while, but pretty soon it'll go MySpace mode anyway because there are competitors. We have a free market of technology anyway. The difference is right now, listen, like what you have here, I've pointed out. Something like Twitter is basically a public utility. You've got, politicians use it, public officials and stuff, police services, USGS, government services, things like that. You're not going to find them on Gab. But if Twitter all of a sudden got regulated FCC style, like a pre-Stern terrestrial radio sort of thing, it would quickly collapse, and then Gab would be the main platform. And some of these have already moved beyond the reach of U.S. law. They're taking advantage of the globalized world, oddly enough, in order to try to platform people who fight against the tyranny of globalism. By the way, truck going by at the moment, or a school bus for some odd reason. Never happened before, not exactly in the middle of town. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, what would happen if these things are applied is it would cripple these sites. I hope that Google realizes Google needs to take a stand at this point and say, look, we're going to stop doing the censorship shuffle here because it's going to destroy us as a site. YouTube was made out of millions of individuals putting sometimes edgy opinions out there. That's basically why the platform exists in the first place. There were competitors to YouTube early on. People just happened to find a home for the really edgy shit there, and it was funny. People swearing a lot, people saying politically incorrect shit, people doing all sorts of crazy things, sometimes of a harmful nature. YouTube is already a safe site. Dude, there's a reason that they got rid of the 13 plus age limit ages ago, and it wasn't just because they wanted to line their pockets. Slate doesn't want to tell its audience that the reason why Slate would want broadcast regulations, censorship at the government level on the internet, is to benefit them. They wouldn't be affected by it. They're never going to say fuck in their news report. They don't have to worry about it. They'll never have controversial opinions because they're only about money. And so they're willing to play the game. They're willing to temper their message and say exactly whatever Uncle Sam tells them is okay to say through some regulatory agency. For those of us who choose not to, we're going to end up having to use non-U.S. services to provide material, entertainment, satire, infotainment, information in the more general sense, anything, music, whatever, indie content, to a U.S. audience. We're going to have to use foreign firms. Slate is literally arguing for the mass exodus of U.S. tech cash out of the United States. Doesn't this at least piss the fiscal conservatives off? At the very least, they should be pissed off at this. And why would any self-respecting, self-proclaimed liberal want the government to come in and turn YouTube into TV 2.0? Isn't that kind of contrary to the whole concept of the internet? The whole reason why the internet was fun to begin with is you're like, wow, look at all this stuff I can explore. These are real people. I can interact with people. Chat rooms and making videos and blog post stuff. It was cool. You can interact with all sorts of cool material that you otherwise wouldn't have. Especially if you're like me and you're some kid in the middle of nowhere in some fucking little village of a few thousand or tens of thousands of people in small town America 10 years ago. Yeah, okay, there wasn't as much to do necessarily. The internet was there though. And it was great, but now they're trying to ruin the internet. So yeah, we need to fight back as much as possible. And creators need to fucking get smart about putting out the message against censorship. We need to get tough. We need to start talking about it more. The best way to preserve free speech is to fucking speak. And then do it in a funny way. Do it in a sarcastic way. Be bitter, be black-pilled or whatever. It takes all kinds. But at the very least, speak out against it. Because if you temper yourself, say, well, I might get deplatformed if I criticize Vox. I don't fucking give a shit. I don't care what happens to me as far as that goes, because I'm gonna keep making the same content anyway. It's just a matter of if U.S. tech firms want the money, the revenue from that content being made, and if the government doesn't want to turn the other way, let the internet get regulated, or let the Silicon Valley firms, destroy themselves, bend over backwards with their monopolistic practices, and destroy the Western internet. Yeah, then you'll have a bunch of firms in Asia cropping up. Look, the Taiwanese government doesn't give a shit if I say fuck. The Thai government doesn't give a shit if I say fuck. They don't care if I'm politically correct by Western standards. The government of India doesn't give a shit about your racial views. They don't give a fuck. Base your sites, I guess, overseas if you want free speech. It's very strange to me that any American, liberal, conservative, whatever they label themselves, can look at the situation and see that a multi-million-dollar company here is directly calling for the government to come in and hyper-regulate a bunch of tech firms in order to literally stanch out political speech. Don't you see the problem with this? I guess they're just fucking being led like blind to the slaughter. That's about all. Peace out.